Hi guys, Kevin here. So many of you have asked, can we simplify the TableTurn story and what really TableTurn is about? So during this video, which is the very first one, I wanted to walk you through what we call the sprint financing, where TableTurn is really adding value, where TableTurn is removing limitations from its own customers. So I wanted to take this example, the startup needs. Every startups will go through this normal curve, as you can see now. They will need to launch, build at some point. There is a big chasm, which is where most startups are failing because they are actually not getting the right product or the right team, or sometimes just the capital. And scale, it's another story, but basically it's all about the network and the maturity. It's about the capacity to expand globally. So all of those startups, as you can see on the bottom left, they need to form, they need to validate, and they need to grow, right? Otherwise, they are not investable businesses. So let's look at what those startups needs. They need obviously to create a team. They need to have a bench of advisors to make sure that actually this makes sense. They need to build very strong IP to differentiate themselves. They need to talk with their first customers so that they understand what product to be built. They need to do some market research. They need to finance and accounting for tax relief and obviously cash flow management. They need IT and technology expertise. They need legal support. They need marketing, sales, and distribution channels creation. All of this is critical for every single business. So now you might say, well, it's missing something. Yes, it's missing. It may be missing a few things, but let's just focus on these core needs for now because it's actually enough for us to explain what the real value proposition that TableTurn has to offer. Now, if you look at this, most of the startup will spend on their time to raise capital. And because they are small teams, they will be struggling to raise the capital. They will have to talk to a lot of VCs. First of all, they will have to find them. Once they have found them, they will have to found them. They'll have to sell themselves to them. They will have to negotiate the valuation. They will have to negotiate the terms. They will have to go through due diligence. It's a very long and painful process for most of the startups, and unfortunately, lots of startups are failing purely because they actually don't find the right financial partner, and it takes about 40% of their time. So, how do we go about literally focusing on what really matters for the customers, for the end customers? How can we give back 40% of the time to the startups so that we ensure that they build the right IP, they build the right value proposition, they acquire customers, they build a strategy, they build a company culture, they focus on what really matters to the business? Well, it leads us to being able to identify where can we start. We all know that every long journey starts with baby steps. So can we identify what really matters in the early days of the business? A very, very small portion of each of those critical elements for success. And by combining them, we can actually go on and on so that we grow the businesses and we support them all the way through their lifespan, right? So if you take a portion of all of these critical needs, you can obviously combine them into a certain amount of time, and you can come if you can measure it with time, you can therefore measuring it in terms of capital, and if you can resonate in terms of capital, you can resonate in terms of LKY, in terms of linkage. So that's really what for us sprint financing is about. It's about identifying what is really critical for the business for the next 3 to 4 months, and then duplicating this many time over time like any other evergreen fund would do. So what's the impact of this? What's the consequences of this? The yellow curve that you are seeing, it's the typical path that every single business startup on the planet, apart with some exceptions, obviously, will actually go through. They will have to raise a seed. They will spend lots of time raising a seed. They will spend a lot of time raising Series A and Series B and so on. But most importantly, you have that gap. You have that failing phase here. Just that seed where you can observe that the time they are spending the money, they're using their own cash to raise capital, right? And how does that create value for the business? It doesn't really much, right? It actually slows down the business. It's a hidden cost that actually the founding team is so much focused on finding the right investors, on finding the smart investor to actually be successful, that actually it hampers them. It prevents them to get access to the customers quicker. So you have a lot of dead time and dead and surely waste of time and waste of money here, right? Which is what I've highlighted here in red. So how can we encounter, how can we create solutions that can prevent this to happen? Well, this is what the sprint financing is about. It's about really it being able to give you the first resources to achieve your first milestones. It's about keep on giving you enough so that you create IP, because we know that actually you can focus, we know what the startup needs to focus on for the next 3 months, and we can measure it. And therefore, if we can measure it, we can allocate the right resources to it so that the startup keeps on achieving milestones, all the ways concentrated on the product, on the market, on strategy, on IP, on innovation, on and on. And for the same amount of money, you end up with a business which is way more robust and actually getting more customer attraction, because you are more resilient, you are more robust. And if you are not going through the phases where you start to tell your team, guys, I won't be able to pay your wage for the next few months, can you start to find a part-time job, but please still loyal to our company because we are raising capital, but at the same time we haven't closed anything yet. Well, if you can keep on retaining your customers, keep on retaining your employees, then you are going to be a healthier business, and in the long term you're going to outcompete every competitors, because you won't be spending and therefore wasting most of your time finding the right talents, finding the right marketing agencies, finding the right lawyers, finding the right CFOs and accountants, finding your your most precious experts which are going to take you to success. All of this combined is really that velocity that we bring through TableTurn. For the same amount of cash you are raised, you're way more robust business. So in conclusion, the business stays 100% focused on value creation and building IP. That's really what matters, and that's what sprint financing is about. We de-risking the businesses by being more careful as to how we deploy the capital, how we allocate the resources, and we track every single steps of their progress so that we know they are actually not spending their money in things that doesn't really matter, that don't really matter for the customers. Yeah, that was it. I hope this is enjoyable. Please give me some feedback on this, because this is our very first video. I want to make sure that this is clear, and then I'll do one again if you guys want me to. All right, cheers.